if you're not familiar with Curve, with me, I work for Curve Digital, and I've been working for a long time in, I guess, what is these days called digital transformation. In the olden days, it was just an IT project. And but I started off life as a traditional computer science background, Java dev in investment banking back in the day. And then I moved to the Microsoft stack maybe 15 years ago. And since then, I've been doing quite a lot of work with Azure, Dynamics, Power Platform, across lots of different industries. And for the past 9 years or so in consultancy. So, and most of that is for Curve Digital. So I'm working really as a solution architect in our data practice for organizations where data enablement is a thing for them, which isn't every organization. So it's my job really to design solutions using the whole Microsoft stack, but today very much focusing on Fabric, which is a very relatively recent, exciting new solution for Microsoft. And some of that, this content, has been somewhat inspired by previous VRT sessions. So I just want to call out in terms of like the overall concept of what I'm discussing today. So hopefully that should explain where I'm coming to this from and my worldview. So really broken into 4 sections. Fabric, what problems it solve? And this is largely looking to the Microsoft and their sort of marketing material. And then drilling down further into section 2, into more specific problems, because I think Microsoft probably assume every company is like a SP 500 company, and most aren't. So for small organizations, for medium-sized organizations, they still have issues to solve with data. Fabric still has something to say to those types of organizations. Thirdly, why is it relevant for Power Platform people, Power Platform devs? Probably a quick raise of hands. Who in here is a Power Platform dev or a solution architect or DevOps, some kind of Power Platform person? Okay, cool. And who would describe themselves more as a data person? 1, 2, a few. Okay, so it's like a bit of a mixture. I think of myself a bit of hybrid these days. But I think it's good to be able to combine both perspectives. And the final section is sort of what I call the demo. But as I said, a demo is let's just build something together and see how it goes. I think that's the true value of seeing really how good this stuff works. So Fabric, what problem does it solve? Good question. So I think data is growing exponentially. And we're told by IDC by next year there'll be like 175 zettabytes of data in the world, which just seems a bit mad because apparently that's the number of Blu-ray discs that it needs to go to the moon and back 23 times, which feels like I've never been to the moon personally, so it sounds like a big number. It sounds like a long way. So there's just a lot of data being produced, and with that comes various challenges. So with governance, with really be able to be sure it's secure, that it's that you're compliant with all the very obvious law enforcement agencies, and be able to use it in some capacity, not just like store it all over in different clouds in a massive data swamp. So that's one global problem. But for most organizations, they exist in this kind of state where potentially they've got different types of data from different places, data fragmented, stored in multiple places and multiple locations. It's hard to get their arms around it. And they're trying to get to this point where ultimately it's almost like you're enabling your users, not only users, but also intelligent applications, because in effect, your data is like one knowledge graph and it's all connected and everything you need is there and nothing more. But getting to that point is incredibly difficult for most organizations for many reasons. Not only that as the world's got more cloudified, there's more solutions, and that itself can cause this kind of fragmentation problem. So, in digital transformation applied to transformations, you're kind of thinking about four things. So first thing is technology. Well, that's just the box. That could be any box, could be Fabric, could be something else. You need to hydrate your solution with the right data. You need the right people, and then you need the right processes to make all that work. And getting all these things working really well in unison is pretty hard. And ultimately, it all stacks on this bottom layer, which is technology. So this is my kind of worldview, that if you get the technology right, you have something that's fundamentally simple to use, supports all the layers above it, that's a good place to be. And that's what Microsoft are aiming Fabric ultimately at. I don't describe it quite like this, but that's how I see it in terms of the work I'm involved in, where you've got these pretty big complex programs with teams of 50 people or more, and you're there to handle the data and do good things with it, in line to what their business requirements are. But it's hard because you're driving down a 50-lane motorway at the same time with lots of other people. So basically, Fabric is designed to help a lot of these things around integration, governance, security. It does it like a SaaS-like centralized cloud hosting solution, a bit like Power Platform, ultimately. And before Power Platform, there was SQL servers, web servers, API servers, all sorts, networking, and now that's all taken care of. Fabric in itself is a similar way. It's doing that sort of thing for a data platform, which I think is a promising thing, because I still remember the days when you had to configure those kind of solutions by hand, and it was really hard to get it right. And that's not to say Fabric is the only solution out there. And this is a diagram from quite a well-known VC company, 2024. It shows how incredibly complex the data and AI landscape's gotten. It used to be a day where you had three database choices: MySQL, SQL Server, Postgres. And now is this. So I think where Fabric adds value is that it's a one-box solution for businesses who want to work with data without having to think about everything on here. And the value of that is simply we all suffer incredible decision fatigue these days, and we just want to reduce the number of decisions we make. So you look at the likes of Mark Zuckerberg and his wardrobe of just grey t-shirts, because he's trying to take that one decision point out of every single day because he needs that for something else. So I, for one, applaud the one box concept. If it works well, that's the caveat. Because when you go to that one box concept, obviously building that one box solution becomes a lot more complicated. So the two big problems: dispersed data, complex tooling landscape. Let's call those out. That is ultimately what Microsoft have played out as the reason for Fabric. This is a standard Microsoft diagram. You'll have seen it a million times. It's on all over their material. You see it simplifies that massive landscape into just a few boxes. And it's all quite pretty, but I suspect most of you won't really understand what each of these boxes does if I just showed you that. So I've got a different view of this that hopefully will sort of land what those are for in a slightly different way. So I call these the 5 wants from data and AI enablement. It's kind of what my job is all about at the moment. So it's things that companies want to do with their data, whether it's like integration, or it's governance, whether it's reporting KPIs, or it's more advanced stuff like propensity models, or even down to agentic systems. And if we spin those into that more grounded day-to-day problems that companies have, it looks a bit more like this. So we can all understand what these things look like. These are all things that companies want to do with their data if they're selling anything, they've got any customers, which pretty much is every single organization. They may not all have Dynamics, but these days Dynamics is widespread. Even if it's not the only solution out there in an organization. So what Fabric does for this is it provides you at that that one box solution various components that fit into each of these areas. So for integration, you've got data engineering, data factory. For governance, understanding where your sensitive data is, why it's there, and where it is, you've got Purview, which sits alongside like information protection and stuff like that. To protect and manage your data beyond, places like Fabric, even across the Office 365. But also above that, for anything else, you've got your data warehouse and your Power BI. And sales forecasting, customer churn, assessing how ready they are to buy. Then you're dealing with the Fabric data science experience. At the top, you've got your real-time intelligence where you're able to react to like real-time events using like ranges and thresholds and all sorts of good stuff like that, as well as plug into OpenAI. And the kind of power of all of this stuff, like Purview by way of OpenAI, aren't quite in the Fabric box. They're in the ecosystem, but they don't come under this concept of one cost that I've got down here. But everything's regulated by effectively the features in one lake. The fact that you've got one place to store your data, one place that that place has shortcuts. It can do mirroring, but also it's got like one way of controlling security. So it gives you fairly granular access control that allows you to make sure that your data is as secure as it needs to be. And it also gives you this idea of sensitive labels with Purview, which again it supports and reinforces the governance requirements for organizations where you may have data that's highly sensitive, but not necessarily just in your databases. It could also be highly sensitive in your Office 365 Word documents, could be Excel files. But you can apply that kind of same treatment across all of those, across your organization. So from what I'm saying, you can see that Microsoft have built Fabric to be an organization level solution, rather than being a team level solution. So for instance, your OneLake, there's only one OneLake per tenant. You can carve it up and do things with it and segregate as appropriate. But there's one lake per tenant. That's the limitation. So the next few slides are just drilling a bit deeper into these things on the right, before we kind of talk a bit more about Power Platform. So in terms of exploding out the key areas we discussed, so generally this is where most organizations have ended up, especially in organizations at reasonable scale. You end up with all these different databases and different teams, different areas. And to build any kind of decent analytic solution, you're kind of having to just move data around all the time. And the problem with this, I guess, everything's working, it's fine. But imagine that, like me, you're working generally on these projects where lots is happening and changing and being built all at the same time. Then you end up with situations where it's quite difficult to kind of manage those dependencies, and any changes in this environment are cost consuming to spec, to develop, to test, and to release. And they cascade down. So you make a change on here on the left in IT, and you want in the marketing, maybe you have to go through all this whole bunch of systems. It just explains why digital transformations cost so much. They typically take 5 more years according to industry stats, and more than $1,000 billion gets spent under this label every year. So that's just a huge amount of expense, of which not all of it is building data platforms, right? But doing AI, but it feels like the whole world's being eaten by AI at the moment. So maybe it is. I don't know, hard to say. But certainly it's contributing to that number, having just generally having solutions that look like this at the moment. So this is the idea of OneLake in a bit more, more graphically. So all those different things that Fabric can do, you've got all this, you've got your different users able to use a different experience within there, and underneath it all is OneLake. So, and OneLake, yes, it's secure centrally, and it's got this unified governance idea. But regardless whether you're a hardcore data engineer or a business user in Power BI, you're still using the OneLake. So that's I think the primary, the core idea. They must have invested lots of money making sure that OneLake is really robust, and be able to find good integrations in shortcuts and mirroring. So mirroring, so shortcuts first. Um, Shortcuts, it applies to Azure, applies across to AWS, GCP, also to Dataverse. So essentially, you can access data from lots of different places or from Fabric as if it's all there. You can secure it centrally. So that's quite a key concept. And all of that duplication, there's no movement of data. You access it from where it is. And let's see. And if it's Azure, it's two-way access. So you can write changes back. For the others, they're read-only. And there's also limitations around things like managed endpoints, managed private endpoints. So things to bear in mind. Mirroring is covering database-like solutions, so Cosmos, SQL, Snowflake, and the interesting thing about mirroring is it's almost cost-free. I say almost because every SKU in Fabric gets a quota of how much you can mirror, but it's quite a large quota. So for most people, it's essentially free. Um, and once your data's mirrored, again, you can use it as it's part of one lake as if it's all there in one place. Hmm. Right, three more slides, and I'm going into the Power Platform bits. Just more detail on security. So security, you can control access to workspaces and the subcomponents within it. So lakehouses, warehouses, semantic models, but also within the folders. So as I said, fairly granular. And within those warehouse lakehouses, that's where your shortcuts will be. And it's the same Microsoft Entra that controls access to Azure, Power Apps, Office 365. So you can't accidentally leave, you know, access to a departed employee. And if your policy mandates MFA across your organization, then you can be pretty sure that MFAs apply to users accessing Fabric, and that's topical. Because if you've heard of the massive data breach that happened with AT&T only a couple of weeks ago, details 110 million customers were leaked. The preliminary analysis suggesting that it's because they weren't using MFA universally, which meant that some of their accounts got breached, access accounts got breached. So I think from a perspective of unified security, no, that shows why this stuff is real, why it's useful to have. And then the sensitive labels are suggested. Same sensitive labels can be applied in Fabric as they can in Office 365. When you apply them, it takes effect downstream as well into reports, into an external data sharing, and across Office 365. So you're presenting like a Power BI in PowerPoint, it should reflect through and prevent you seeing stuff unless you've got permissions to do so. That's all useful. And the one cost concept, this is pretty nerdy, probably too deep for this session, but it's like one bill. So if you've been used to using Synapse, where every single element of that solution is pay as you go almost, where if you get a bigger file one day, the next your bill is more than the day before, then Fabric is a lot easier to budget for. So it keeps your finance directors happy because you know you're paying X amount a month, and unless that box is far too small for your needs, that's the amount you'll be paying. It won't suddenly be really spiky one month and be a lot less the next. So that's helpful from an organization enterprise perspective. So that makes sense. So what I've shown you thus far, I guess, is this Fabric solution is very, very attractive from an enterprise perspective because it makes lots of enterprise problems much simpler to solve. From a data perspective, from a security perspective, from a management perspective, governance perspective. From a Power Platform perspective, let's talk about that. So same diagram I showed you a few slides ago, but if I show you, go back, sorry. Same boxes on the right Fabric. You may argue that you could actually do quite a lot of this in Power Platform without any external solutions, right? So you can do AI Builder. That gives you classification models, gives you, to some degree, intelligent agents. You can do reporting. And you can do some kind of data integration, Power Automate. So where Fabric comes into it is because it gives you much bigger data storage. The cost of storage in Fabric is roughly 1/500th the cost of like Dataverse. I know you can like do virtual entities and do offloading, but this is just all native. You don't have to do anything clever to take advantage of those costs. You can do rich visualizations. I seem to chop off my slide off. Which I don't know what I wrote there. And you can do pro code data solutions. So those are the three things that Fabric gives a Power Platform solution that you wouldn't otherwise have. So moving on. Integration from Fabric to Power Platform is really, really easy. You can do a shortcut. You can also do a link where effectively you kind of mirroring all your data over. There's two options, and the implications of that are there's some storage needs in Dataverse that support this Fabric shortcut. But going back, you've got your data flows, you've got your virtual entities as well, if you want to just plug directly in without having to do any pipelines. Although generally, I'd say just generally like to decouple things as much as possible rather than having like your analytic solution next to your transactional solution all running together. It just helps manage performance a bit easier. In terms of configuring database mirroring, I've got some slides. I'll share these afterwards. There's like 10 slides at the end where Scott Sewell is one of the principal program managers at Microsoft. He shares some of his configuration slides with me. So there, I'll share those with you afterwards. Rather than demo those, because that's very easy to do, but I guess it's still worth doing step by step. But also it was covered by Claire a while ago in her talk. So no need to repeat the same material. So we're almost at the demo. Any questions before I zoom in? No? All good so far. I suspect you have more questions as the demo runs. You'll see it become more concrete. We've got about 25, half an hour. So it should be plenty of time for this. So I will stop the PowerPoint and I'll zoom in onto my Fabric screen. So let me move a few things around so they're ready. So first things first, what you see, I'll take you through as if you're a complete newbie. So the first things first is I'm just going to Power BI.
Right, Ed, we can't see the screen yet.
Oh, sorry. I'll go back. Sorry. I will do that bit again. No, sorry, showed the wrong one. Try again. So this is Google, right? But I'm going to show you that to get to Fabric, I'm going to powerbi.com essentially. So there's no Azure portal, there's no special place to go. this is just the same place as you would go if you were doing Power BI. To provision a new workspace, I'm going to goes here and click on new workspace. So I've already made a couple of demos recently, so I'm going to make a new one, call it 3, and I am going to assign it to a trial instance. But you can see I've got a Fabric instance down here as well I can use. The trial instance is the one you don't have to pay for. It's free for 60 days. And as soon as I do that, I'm doing the trial one just because that's what I expect most of you guys to use in your first go at Fabric. You can see the screen started, and you've got appears to be a blank screen. And then if I go into workspaces, you can see these ones, the little diamond on them. They're the Fabric instances. Everything else is standard Power BI. So it is 5 seconds start. So that bit is completely true. There's no dispute with that. Let's test the next idea of 5 minutes to insight. So what I'm going to do is I am going to create a task flow. So you can see this is like a new concept that Microsoft added, where they're giving you an idea of, based on what you want to do, they're giving you a task flow. So there's 6 options, and they're all fairly self-explanatory. You've got the general case, which is what I'll use now, but then you've got others like basic data analytics, using SQL analytics, and then they're just basically helping to narrow down what you're interested in looking at. I think that's quite useful from the first experience perspective, because there are a lot of different options in here, and you'll see more and more as you go deeper. You've got the medallion architecture. If you've been building data warehouses or data lakes, it's kind of a standard thing where you have your 3 tiers: gold, silver, and bronze. Various levels of refinement between those different zones. You've got like event analytics, Lambda, and then if you've got any particularly data sensitive use cases, then they prepared you something along those lines as well as a basic machine learning task flow. But as I said, I'm going to go for something, just go for the general case, which satisfies the most use cases. So I'll set that. You can see straight away on screen, you get like this left to right flow, which is starting from get data and going down there to visualize and track it. So in order to start getting data, I'm going to go to new item. New item gives me a bunch of different options. And what I'm going to pick is I'm going to pick a SQL Visual Mirror. We've all pretty much got SQL Visual somewhere in our solutions, right? So what this does is it allows you to connect to a database that lives in the SQL Visual. There's no big explanation in that. And you can see, actually, I've already got one that I configured earlier. So I'm going to avoid cheating, and I'm going to do it as if we're doing it from scratch, just to show you all the steps. So this server's I'm going to copy details through. So I'm going to choose organization account, but strictly speaking, best practice should be using service principal to be absolutely secure. Because if you're using organization account, that's my account. This demo account, if something happens to this account, then it means that whatever's configured of this breaks. So definitely not something you want to be doing anywhere, but it'll play environment. So I'm going to connect to it. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Invalid credentials. Let me try again. Okay, that's not helpful. Oh, I said I made a mistake. Yeah, I see. Put the wrong database in and try again. There you go. I should do it. All right, so this time it's got through the next screen. That was user error. So what you'll see is that it'll slowly try to figure out what data is in this database. It's pulling in a bunch of different tables that are seen at the moment. So whilst we wait for it to run, let's talk about limitations. You're about to hit one. Just give it a few seconds. Okay, so the first limitation is if this is already mirrored somewhere else, you can't mirror it to your new solution. So I've seen this before. So what I'm going to do is go into here. Go into here. I need to stop this one before that one will sync up. So I'll just show you that quickly. I'll stop this one. That was in Ed Demo, and this one is in Ed Demo 3. So once this one stops, that one will be able to set that one up. Your limitations are you need if I just hover over this, you'll see every table needs a primary key because that's how it identifies whether data is new or not. Still, okay, that stopped. So this will now work if I go to connect. It's now happy. It's now whirling away. So what I'll do now is it'll start to create essentially a copy of all of that data in there into a location in Fabric where I can access it without having to go back to the original database. So it's decoupled. It means if I'm pulling massive amounts of data, whatever's using this database isn't being choked. So that's helpful very much helpful from a solution perspective. Other limitations. So other limitations generally around the managed private endpoints. So if you've got databases that are in private VNets, this currently doesn't support it. And if you look at the Microsoft roadmap going forwards, it's likely to be happening sometime this year, but more towards Christmas. There you go. So I can create that mirrored database. So I've easily bridged my 5 minutes to insight. But as I said, I've been talking through it. I deliberately put in that issue there so you could see that, although there are limitations, their messages are pretty helpful. They're not like the usual, exception 01 or whatever you use to Stack Overflow. They're actually helpful enough that you could go find that, Google it, and find a solution for it. There you go. It's starting up. Whilst this is starting up, what I'll do is take you through to the one I've built already, just to accelerate a little bit because of time. Let's see what's there. But essentially, what you do as a developer, you start from left to right. So first step is get data. So I've decided to mirror some data in, but then you store it, and your storage options are Lakehouse, data warehouse, event house, or data mart. And the one you choose depends really on how you want to be working and what kind of data you're getting. Event house is really for stream-based events-based data. Lakehouse is your traditional file-based solution where most you're getting flat files of some form, and process those into things. Warehouse is a sort of tabular based solution like SQL Server, like Synapse dedicated pool, that sort of thing. Or your data mart is SQL Server based, but it's designed for smaller amounts of data. So it's optimized for different things. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose, I'll choose a lakehouse at first because that lets me demo a few things I want to show you. So it starts up, and then you can do tables or files, but it's basically blank. So one of the things I want to do is show you, I can bring you some data from AWS. So I'm going to create a new shortcut. Actually, but before I do that, I'm going to create a new subfolder. Call it social media. Because the granular permissions you get from here allow you to secure down to this folder level, so it's important to have like appropriate structure. So then what I'm going to do is do a new shortcut, and you can see the options for shortcuts. Currently, well, there's internal or external, but the one I'm interested in is AWS. And it's quite often that either because they're just running multiple clouds for the sake of it, to kind of prevent vendor lock-in or manage risk. Many organizations seem to have like a combination of AWS and Azure these days. But that's not necessarily a limitation to a solution like Fabric. So I'm going to just get some details off this for what I'm trying to get at. Sorry, this one. So the easy way of getting that is just by taking that and just taking the end off it. And I've already provided the access key. You can see the access key has already been added at some point. I don't want to show you those because that's private. Oh, sorry. Try again. One more time. But I can show this file. It's just a anonymized anyway. Just like this, it's not Kaggle. You get lots of good examples of data from there. So it's just social media data with a bit of sentiment in there already. Interesting what that is. If I go next from here, what you see is using my access credentials, access keys, it's able to connect to that. It's able to add a shortcut. That shortcut appears here, and then you get this little kind of chain link icon, and within there, you can set a file that I showed you just a second ago. I preview it. It's the same file that you've just seen. It's not revolutionary, not groundbreaking, but it's still useful because when I'm accessing that data lake, that's effectively behaving like a native part of my OneLake. Useful thing to mention actually whilst we're here. So if I show you, so you'll be wondering like about the cost of egress from AWS. So one of the things you can turn on if you get into your workspace settings. There's a mixture of settings at workspace and kind of administrator level. And most of them seem to be at the tenant level, but there's a few things that you can control at workspace. This is one of them. I can't remember exactly what it is. You can turn on caching. That's useful if you're finding you're using particular data source heavily, but it's not changing that rapidly, because generally if it's sort of file based, the same file won't be changing. So you can turn on caching and turn on a retention period. That saves you downloading it every time you want to access it. So that's useful to be aware of as well for costs. Let's move on. So that's the first step done. You can see that I've done a little bit of the second step, which is prepping somewhere to store stuff. And let's see, what else should I do from here? I'll kind of add some stuff from Dataverse as well, just to show you how that part works. I think that's quite relevant for this audience. So same thing applies. I'm just going to add a shortcut to Dataverse data in here. Get my Dataverse details. Got 15 minutes or so. I'll speed up a bit just to get through this for you guys. So you can see I can access all my Dataverse data. I'm going to let's just pick contact, because that's always your core Dynamics table, isn't it? And then, but you can also see if you've got customer insights journeys, your data is also available here. You can see who's been blocked, who's been bounced, and you pull that in as well. So interestingly, when you pull it into here, you can see that it's stored as some kind of, I don't think it's finished syncing it, Parquet file. So that's like a compressed file format, which you'll be familiar with if you work with data platforms. Like but it's Delta Lake, which is like a Databricks concept. So I can't actually access that directly, strangely enough, because you try and read that. Yeah, but you can load it to a table. So I can load that to a new table. Called email bounced. Do that, because should disappear here shortly. There you go. So that's done. So that's now available as a table here. I can now open that in a notebook. So generally, if you're dealing with lake houses, then you're dealing with stuff in notebooks. But you can see the context it gives you is within that data lake house that it just created. If you want to do, quickly look at the data in there, it's fairly easy. You can just do a select like that using Spark SQL, or you can go into your pandas and stuff like that if that's what you're into. But yes, that's your data from customer insight journeys, just in that notebook. And then from there, you can push it into, another database, or you can essentially pull this data into Power BI and start doing stuff with it. In the last 12 minutes, I think what I'll do is I'll jump given the time, I'm going to just jump you into, not this one, into the first demo I built today. So you can see in here, I've got a lake house, got a warehouse. The difference is, in the warehouse, you're generally using SQL. The access in this using SQL. If you're more familiar with SQL, then the warehouse is the right pattern to use. Instead, it just depends if you've got files. But the interesting thing is, so you can see that if I show some of the queries I've got on here, I can pull data from a mirror database. And this one is I've just pulled in some transactions. It's take a little while to run through. It's worth bearing in mind this is running on the very smallest instance type, like a 2 and F2. I was going to show you, I think the most important thing is what you need to get is you can do cross database queries through here. I think that's one of the limitations of SQL Azure that's been around for many years. So if you can combine your data into your lakehouse, into your one lake, from your data warehouse, you can then do cross query joins, which I think is what allows you to basically unify your data into your reports. Let's try this one, see if that one's any better. Let's come back to that. But if we move on from here, so once you've got your data here, it's quite easy to do the next step. Next step in your demo is you can start creating, you can prepare. So if you got a traditional medallion architecture, that's when you would potentially move your data between your gold, silver, and bronze and refine it, etc. But if you, assuming you've done that, then what you can do now is create a new report. So using that, and what you can do from here, you can see all the different types of data I've got in my one lake. You can pick from reports, and what you'll see here, also pass security check, is what looks like a Power BI screen. You can see the data. Again, this is like some data I haven't shown you yet, but it's like membership data for testing purposes. And that's come through from my data warehouse that I prepared in my separate demo. And I can just put that through into visualization here. Let's get a membership number. And I can quite quickly put it straight into Power BI. And there wasn't a lot of faff back and forth. I didn't need to go into Power BI desktop and find the right connection. It just virtually connected itself up because the one lake integration is so strong. And then let's just check it's finished running. Nope, still running. It's typical Amazon Live demos. The final thing to show is that final step, I think, in this task flow. So the final thing is to do tracking. So this is essentially it's a new feature for Fabric that you don't see in Synapse. It's called Data Activator. And from here, what you can do a number of different things. But what I'm going to show you is what happens when you look at this reflex sample. So essentially, data reflexes are actions that you can trigger to take based on something happening with your data. So let's say, I think this one is about medicine. So you may think, you're tracking, maybe you've got sensors in your parcel. Maybe you've got tracking that happens in location, temperature. So what you can do is do stuff like this, where if the temperature of that package gets too warm, you can start triggering alerts to people. So other use cases of this are things like, apparently McLaren F1 use it on their car telemetry to trigger like automated actions within the team to say they need to do something. So for very real-time data, this is certainly something that's very unique to Fabric. Being able to see that that's coming in and be able to trigger and do stuff with it. I think that's all I think I was going to show you, but I need a few more slides just to wrap up at the end. So I'll run those through, and there should be a couple minutes left at the end. If you've got any questions on any of this material. So I think the rest of the slides I'm going to go through is just zooming forwards to what I showed you. And I don't think I've fully showed you all of this, but I've showed you legacy data coming in into a data lake, which you can do stuff with. What I didn't show was this virtual entity concept of Dynamics basically linking straight to a table that's in Fabric, which you might want to do because some things you might want to offload from Dynamics. Let's say you're doing like roll-up calculations and you want to have really fine control over that. You want to decouple it from like a Dynamics deployment cycle, then you might potentially want to do that. But generally, I'd say you want to keep Fabric separate and push stuff back through Power Automate. You can have different types of workspace within your one lake, really designed to help you carve up your tenant into like different teams, different departments and different areas of business process. And if I zoom forwards from here, so it slows down too much. These are the costs of Fabric. So it's worth noting it starts quite cheap. So the F2 that was running that demo really slowly, kind of mega cheap option, goes quite high. The high end, you're talking about processing terabytes of data every hour. The little Copilot icon, it shows you only get that once you get up to 64 and above, F64 and above. So that's your cutoff before you start getting Copilot. Once you get into 64, you also get Power BI licenses thrown in. Anything below that, you're doing them on top. So that's another consideration. And it feels like Microsoft, with their pricing structure, seems trying to get people onto the F64, but it's potentially not. It's probably not cheap for all businesses, especially the smaller end of the spectrum. So you have to be fairly creative on these things. But it's worth noting that the cost of database storage is very, very expensive compared to this. So if you've got large amounts of data to store, you better put it into here, process your data and push it into Dataverse, just the bits you need. That's a pattern we use quite a lot for customers who might have a lot of data, especially things like social media data or email click-through data. That gets very, very verbose very, very quickly. Limitations, got to put a slide limitations. So Fabric shortcuts, loads of limitations, but the concept's there. I think it's just picking a use case carefully, and the caching feature is useful for just saving money if you're pulling a lot of data through. Same for mirroring, a bunch of limitations there as well. Like your SQL server has to be a certain size, on-prem SQL database not yet supported, although coming soon. And other things like you can only have one mirrored at a time, and you can't, if it's already doing CDC for something else, or you've got Synapse Link running, then again, it doesn't support it. It's using the same component of SQL Server. Maximum tables, that you can mirror fabric is for 500, and if you're doing Dataverse mirroring, hit limit of 1,000 tables, change tracking enabled. If you get above that, it's not supported, it'll give you an error. Data activator, there are some limits here also. Pretty high though, so I think you're pretty good on these. The only thing that might trouble you is you don't use Power Automate to send alerts out. You can only email internal users, which may not work 100%. So that's anyone registered on the same as your tenant. So finally, we've been doing a lot of Synapse over the past few years. Still a valid option, and the two kind of measure up against each other slightly differently. Customers want a more mature solution, still go Synapse. Those who want the journey and have a particular use case, for instance, they want to do that real-time intelligence, they're getting onto the Fabric train at the moment. And so what we do at Curve is just helping to guide customers down the right solution, down the right use case, based on strategy, technology, governance, business requirements. Because it's not clean cut at this point. And the process we recommend looks a bit like this. And there's a proof of concept step, simply because you need to pick your use cases fairly carefully to make sure that one of those limitations doesn't get you. This is a showstopper. That's all from me today. So I think what I'm presenting to you is Fabric is great. Actually, although there were a few things I showed you that went a bit haywire, things ran a bit slow, we did quite a lot of stuff in that 25 minutes, half an hour, which you go, well, if you're still back in your SQL Server days, SSRS days, you would have, even in your Synapse days, it would take you half an hour just to provision a Synapse environment first time around, and maybe it wouldn't work properly because your networking wasn't quite right. So I think from a perspective of that one box, all-in-one SaaS-based approach, that's a really great hit. Like I said, being the sort of thing that makes Fabric become almost like the power platform for data over time. However, having said that, as I said, not a clean-cut decision about whether you should adopt it for your project at this point in time. So you need to go for limitations first to make sure that it's the right fit. That being said, I think I'd encourage everyone to go and look at it and play with it, because that's when you'll understand what it's good for and what's not. How's everyone? It's almost like I wish I could give you more of an enthusiastic endorsement at this stage, because it's been out for a year, yet there's still probably too many rough edges for my liking for a production system.
Thing is, you make it look so easy, Ed. That's the issue.
Well,
it looks so straightforward when you do it. It
did, but you will see that was the third demo I'd built today, because the first one was finding out all those edges and making sure there wasn't anything that I couldn't get through.
Thanks, Ed. There was just one question in the Q&A. Is there any capacity constraint with workspaces?
There are some limitations, but I don't know what they are off the top of my head. When we share the deck, one of the resources I'm sharing on this slide, actually, this first link is a link to my Medium page, and on there I've just collated all the different limitation pages from Microsoft Fabric, because they're spread out, you see. It's quite hard to get them in one place. So go and have a read on that and see what that says, because it's also changing all the time, so there's no point in trying to distill it into one page. It's easy to link off to it.
So yeah, cool. Thanks again, Ed. Thanks everyone for joining as well. Really interesting session today, and I hope to see you back soon at some point.
Sure, we will. I'll come back and show you more. Just
That was
to
brilliant.
start making it, from a lukewarm endorsement to like fabric's the only thing you should be doing. Like, if you could do anything else ridiculous.
It is the
Still working
Microsoft way, though, isn't it? Release something, iterate over it.
It is. And they will get there for sure. I mean, the amount of investment, the amount of changes that are releasing every month is staggering. Where actually it's hard to keep up. But still, just want more data. You want it to be like the finished article.
It's hard to keep up, but that's why these sessions are so useful, because I don't think anyone can know everything. There's so much, isn't there? That if people are sharing like this, I just think it's really valuable for everybody. So I know that others think that too. So thank you again. Have a great evening, everybody, and hope to see you all again soon.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Bye.
Bye.